Hey everybody, what's up? This is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano and Jazz Piano Fundamentals. I also am offering a class through my community college, which starts mid-August, and you can register for now. I have both a beginning and an intermediate level, and I'll put more info in a link. Now, today's video is a total experiment. It might totally crash and burn, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I think should be pretty interesting to folks. And that's the relationship between scales and chords. Now, let me frame this for you a little bit. If you study jazz theory, one of the biggest topics of study is matching chords with scales. So basically, when you see a C minor 7, what scale are you going to use with that? Now, you talk to just about any really good jazz musician, and they hate this for a number of reasons. I think the first thing is that chord symbols aren't always like the most detailed. And so you have to use some different scales depending on chord symbols. And context is really important. A C major 7 is really different in the key of C major than it is in the key of G major. And A minor 7 is really different in the key of A minor than it is in the key of, let's say, F major. So I have this theory of how to look at scales a little bit better. I still don't love teaching and thinking about scales, but I want to run this by you guys for your feedback and to play around with. And so let me, I'm going to go to this view here. And the basics of this theory is that in any scale, the odd numbered notes, so the 1, 3, 5, and 7, these are going to be from the chord. So they're going to be the chord tones, the arpeggio of the chord, basically. So just to give you a simple example, let's say we have a C major 7 here. The 1, 3, 5, and 7 are going to be the 1, 3, 5, and 7 of the C major 7th chord. Okay. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The even numbered notes are going to be from the key. And by the key, I don't mean the overall key center, right? Just because the piece is written in G major doesn't mean that that's going to be the key for the entire piece. It means the key of the moment. So let's just take a couple of scenarios for this C major 7. And so let's say that the key is C major. In this case, the even number notes are going to come from the overall key of C major. Great. We're very familiar with this. This gets us the C major scale. Well, let's say that the overall key is the key of G major, and this isn't actually that crazy, right? A major chord is the 4 chord in major keys. And this very scenario happens in Just Friends. If you ever played Just Friends in G major, the very first chord is C major, but it's in the overall key of G major. Okay, so now we're going to grab notes from the G major key center. So we're going to have C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, C. Right, and this gives us a much better scale to improvise with if we're starting out Just Friends, because we're in the key of G major rather than C major. Those of you who are familiar with scales and modes recognize this probably as the Lydian mode. Let's take another example hypothetically, and then maybe we can look at some tunes. Okay, so let's take a D minor 7. Okay, so no matter what, the 1, 3, 5, and 7, the odd number notes are going to come from the chord, right? They're going to be the notes of the chord. Now, where do we see D minor 7? Most probably within the key of C major, right? It's the 2 in a 2-5-1. And so we're going to grab the even number notes, the 2, the 4, the 6 of the scale, from the key of C major. And when I say that, I'm thinking really about the key signature of C major. So no flats, no sharps. And here's where we get these even numbered notes. For those of you who are very familiar with modes, this is the Dorian mode. And that's what most people will tell you to use as you see a D minor 7. But we could see this D minor 7 a lot of other places. For example, we could see it in the key of F major. Right? That's very common. It's the 6th chord in F major. Of course, if we're in F major, now we have a different context. We're going to use B flats because that's the key signature of F major instead of B natural. Right? Now you might say, well, if they wanted that, wouldn't they write D minor 7 flat 6? And the answer is no. People so rarely write that when they have a 6th chord, even though that's usually what you want to play. You might also say, well, that B flat doesn't really sound that good. And I would say two things to that. The first one is that context is everything. Okay, that might not sound good if I'm just doing this, but if I play kind of the most traditional 1-6-2-5 progression, F major to D minor to G minor 7, right? This is very common progression in all kinds of music. Now this B flat sounds great. And in fact, playing a B natural would be stupid. So I reflexively resolved it immediately. But let me do it without resolving it. It's gross, that B natural, right? And so these two chords, D minor 7, G minor 7, even though they're both written as minor 7s, they're going to have different scales, right? If we're thinking in terms of modes, this would be called the Aeolian mode. But who needs these modes? I'm telling you, odd numbered notes are from the chord, even numbered notes are from the key center. Okay, cool. And sometimes D minor will also be the 3 chord. That's not that weird, actually, right? So it would be the 3 chord in the key of B flat major, in which case we would have an E flat. Now, if you're good with modes, you know that this is called the Phrygian mode. And we know that this shows up, a bunch of different places, but definitely replacing the 1 chord, like in a 3-6-2-5. So here we're in the key of B flat major, 3-6-2-5, a common progression. It's just like that 1-6-2-5 we had before, except the 3 is replacing the 1. So instead of now we're going. So here we have 3 minor chords. And they're each actually going to have a slightly different mode. But they're actually all going to use the same major scale. They're all using the B flat major scale. Right, if you play that scale just against that chord without any context, you're like, ew. But in context, it's exactly the right thing to play. Which brings us to dominant chords, which is where things get the most interesting. Okay, so let's erase. I know, valuable YouTube time. Feel free to fast forward, or I'll vamp. Maybe I'll tell a joke. I don't have time to tell a joke. Okay, so dominant chords. The scenario that we're all familiar with, right, is if we have a G7, and so again, we'll take the 1, 3, 5, and 7 from the chord, and then this is usually going to lead to the key of C. And so here we're going to take the even numbers from the key of C. Cool. And we get our Mixolydian mode, right? This should be probably familiar to most of you. But there's actually a lot of other things that dominant chords can do. I guess the first one that really needs to be, well, before we do that, have you heard of this? Some people call it the backdoor 2-5 or the backdoor dominant, where a G7 will lead to A, right? Again, this happens in just friends. C minor, F7, goes up a whole step to G major. Why does this work? Well, one reason, it's a whole other video, but one reason is that F and D share an octatonic scale, right? They're a minor and third apart, so they have the same octatonic scale, so they can be kind of substituted for one another. Okay, anyway, that's beside the point. But if this G7 is going to A, using this Mixolydian mode is okay, but it doesn't really sound that good. It's not really what we want to do. So we're going to get the even number notes, the 2, 4, 6, from A major, and we're going to have a C sharp, right? That would be in the key signature of A major. The A and the E don't change, right? A major has a C sharp, F sharp, G sharp in the key signature. So the A and the E stay the same. And of course, our even number notes are based on the arpeggio of the chord. So those don't change either. And so now we got what we would call the Lydian dominant mode. I don't care if you know the name, but this is the correct, quote unquote correct, nothing's ever exactly correct in jazz, but this is the most common thing to play there if your G7 is leading to A. Okay, now on to the real main point here, which is if this G7 leads to C minor. What we're going to do here is we're going to take the C harmonic minor scale. We do that because harmonic minor is literally what we use to make harmonies. That's why we call it the harmonic minor. Just to remind you, if you need a review, C harmonic minor would look like this, right? And why are we doing this? Because C minor is the key center now, right? This G7, it doesn't have its own key center. It's always resolving somewhere, okay? So we get A flat, C, and E flat. That's taken from C minor, right? Or you could just think of the key signature of C minor. That's going to get you the exact same result here. So for a G7 leading to C minor, even if the chart does not necessarily say flat 9 and flat 13, this is going to be what you want to do mostly. And by the way, we would call this the C harmonic minor mode 5, or we'd call it harmonic minor mode 5, because it's equivalent to the C harmonic minor scale. So we've seen now these 3 G7s, depending on where they resolve, they're going to be treated differently. And we're always leaving the 1, 3, 5, and 7, but then we're creating a different scale based on the key center. Now, I want to try one more, and I'm not prepared for this at all. So if you're miraculously still with me, this is where I'm going to totally lose myself and you. Or not. Let's see. And that's looking at diminished chords. So a lot of people say that, including me, that with the diminished chord, you want to use a whole half octatonic scale. And that definitely works. I'm not judging that, but I think there's a different way. Okay, so let's say we've got, I'm so stupid to do this on camera. Okay, just experimenting, getting excited here, 'cause I think this is working. Okay, so C diminished 7th would have to have the 4 notes. The arpeggio is the 1, 3, 5, and 7. I know the 6th looks an awful, or the 7th looks an awful lot like a 6, and we might have to be, a little bit tricky about that. So C diminished 7th, the number 1 place it would resolve would be to D flat, right? So let's put in notes from D flat. And we get this pretty interesting scale. B flat is a little bit questionable. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, yeah, so I think we actually don't want that B flat because the A is acting as the seventh here. My apologies. All right, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So very interesting scale. So it's different than the whole half scale, but it's definitely sounding good against that chord, and it's gonna sound really nice in that key. By the way, we would call this a mode of D flat harmonic major. So, which is like harmonic minor, but with a major third. So I guess this would be the seventh mode of D flat harmonic major. But let's say this C diminished was surprising us a little bit and resolving to B flat. If we wanted to treat this in the most tonal way, then we'd take the even numbers from B flat, which gets kind of interesting. So we have to have a G instead of an A there. That's why that's not working. And now we go. So depending on where it's leading, we could end up with different scales for these diminished chords. All right, so if you've stuck with me, thank you for going on this journey. Let me know what you think of this way of achieving scales, getting the odd number notes from the chord, the even number notes from the key, and hopefully we can explore it further in some other videos. Take care.